Final speaker today, if I may then, introduce Jaime Perez, and will give us a view from Peru. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Actually, I would like to first thanks Nigel, Jenny, for giving me the opportunity to talk to you guys tonight, this afternoon. Secondly, to let me think, or rather, let me realize that we are in a World Cup after 36 years. So you challenged me, to see what are we going to do with Spain. So we think it will be possible, unless something very inopportune happens, that we'll face the final. Anyway, please bear in mind that I'm the director of Trade and Investment Office of Peru in the UK, so I have to promote Peru. And my presentation will be probably a lighter version of what you've been talking about. What we've been hearing today has been something pure and hard reality, or possible scenarios of what will happen if the UK leaves the European Union. But my view will be a little bit different, let's say lighter, as I mentioned, on what is happening in the world. And I believe that most of you have already realized that what are the tendencies, the global tendencies, and we've been hearing about health and nutrition, the way millennials are thinking about everything and how are they changing, actually the economy, the technology involved in all the processes that we are seeing today, the transparency, the reduction of food and packaging. Probably two months ago we had a talk where Tesco was saying, besides the merge, how are they working in improving the environment and the social responsibility issues with their suppliers, not only here but also in the value chain. And we ended up with seeing this, and I hope it doesn't come back, but the usual way where the customers were choosing their products was basically because of price, taste, and convenience. But with all those global changes that I mentioned, they are more into the game, let's say, health and wellness, transparency, safety, social impact in the value chain, and experience of the supplier. I'd like to open my presentations basically with this map here. Peru is a very large country. Well, I think it's the third or fourth largest country in South America, after Brazil, Argentina, and I think Colombia. But if you see Peru, it goes from Sweden all the way to Italy. And we are divided in basically three regions: the coast, the highlands, and the Amazon forest. And if you cut, a cross-section of Peru, you will see the sea, the highlands, and the Amazon forest. And we host 83 of the 112 climates in the world. So basically, you can grow everything in Peru. And that gives you an opportunity to produce something with very high yields, especially in the coastline, because although we don't have the source, the water source, the Amazon, for instance, but we are working in very many irrigation projects, and we had expanded. I have a slide after that. We have expanded our agriculture frontier hugely lately. The Lima is just 12 degrees south from the equator. theoretically, we should be a very green country. We are not. Our coast is a desert, but with very high UV refraction. So the fruits and the vegetables are sweeter, are more beautiful, are greener, etc. And as I said, the yields are very high. This is the formal presentation of Peru. We had this made by some ladies, to show you, where are we growing different products, red grapes, basically, oregano, cocoa, papaya, blueberries, tangerines, capsicums, etc., etc. Most of these products are native. However, we have introduced certain varieties, and we're using a trade brand, a brand that we call Superfoods Peru. Superfoods is just a sexier word for nutritional food. And in that, we have several, those here are the introduced products, and the rest of them are native. And all of them have different or certain characteristics that make it superfoods. And we are, when we are talking about the opportunities we see in the future, we are base our efforts, not only in the introduction of new crops, but also in the potential of the native products. This is, probably fortunately for us, we're in the southern hemisphere, so we can supply whatever you want to eat, these exotic foods all year long. You want to eat oranges all year long. You want to eat mangoes all year long. And unfortunately, we have something to supply you whenever it's not available in the northern hemisphere. However, there are a few of them that you cannot get them all year long, like mango, for instance. It just grows in the southern hemisphere. And this chart was written about 2 or 3 years ago. In certain products, for instance, mango, that here is only until April or March, from November to March. Today we have increased the production in a valley which is a little bit south from where the mango producer region is. The valley is called Casma, and we are actually harvesting the mango until June, actually. And I don't know whether you've seen these beautiful Casma mangoes in the market, which are very beautiful, very expensive, though. These are the Peruvian export of fresh fruits and vegetables, and that's the forecast. And this chart was made in 2015, and we are planning to reach the 4,230 US dollars exports in the year 2021. We have become the largest, well, excuse me, okay. This is where the destination of our products are. The first is North America, Europe is the second one, and the third will be Asia. China is a very big market for us after we have negotiated all those entry conditions that we had in I remember I was working in Taiwan in 94, and we started the negotiation with mainland China for grapes and mangoes. And I think the grapes, we got the accessibility about 3 years ago, so it's a very long negotiation with them. I don't know what happened with this. I wanted to say, we are the largest asparagus of exporters in the world, the second on avocados, well, you can see this. It's a fact that Peru is a great force, is a great supplier, for the international markets. What is this? Sorry? 45% of our exports to Europe goes to the Netherlands. Somebody said, I think it was Jose Garcia, who mentioned that the Netherlands is planning to become a hub for fresh fruits and vegetables. They are already. They are already, because there is only 3 to 4 million people in the Netherlands, and I don't think they can eat all what is import. Really, it would be, I would say, impossible. But they are already. So the Netherlands by themselves, I think, takes probably a tenth of what they're importing. And how much of that goes or comes to the UK is about 20%. It's another 20% going to Spain, for instance, from the Netherlands. And there is a big chunk going to Russia and Germany, and from Germany to Poland, and the what you call the Czech Republic and all these countries, under the lead of Germany. But the UK is our third largest market in Europe. This is how our exports to Europe has been growing. In the case of products, we are talking about, this is what we are exporting to the European Union, and this is what we are exporting to the UK. So avocado has grown very, very fast lately. This is 21% of our exports to the world, to the UK. But if you think on, if you see it from the market, we are supplying the 28% of the total imports of avocado in the UK. Same thing, well, asparagus, I don't know whether you've seen that, but you can turn your head and only for 2 or 3 weeks you will find asparagus in any market, Peruvian asparagus in any market. Tangerines and all the citrics that we are exporting accounts for 15%. Blueberries is also a very successful product coming to the UK. When I arrived here in 2014, I was checking the statistics from 2013, and we exported, I think it was $23,000 US. Today, I think we're exporting like 40 million or something like that in blueberries. So that's a very interesting, and not only to this market, it's to the European market in general. This is my comments on Brexit and what will happen to the trade between Peru and the UK in the future. But very much has been said about Brexit, and we really hope that well, it will be fantastic if we had no Brexit, but I think it's a fact. We will have a Brexit. Soft Brexit will benefit us all better than some other alternatives. We trust very much that the withdrawal bill will bring the same conditions that we have with the European Union into the UK market. If that doesn't happen, still we will be, although not in that comprehensive way, but perhaps we will be back to the SGP, or GSP system, where, for most of our products we have zero tariff. So we really don't worry very much. We are very used to changes. Just to tell you an anecdote, in the last 2 years, we have changed 5 cabinets in Peru. So we are used to change. Back in the 80s, we live in a country that in 5 years reached 8,000% inflation rate. How was that? It was very interesting, to say the least. From one day to another, you have 200% inflation. So, what will happen there? Yeah, I think you just have to pay more. Facts are that there's been an inflation in the UK, that's for sure. I do the marketing, the purchasing at home. There's only 2 of us, my wife and I love to cook. So, most of the time I go to the wet market, and I've seen the changes. Whatever it costs you 50 pence is 60 or 70 today. And when they give you 3 or 4 cucumbers per pound, per quid, you just get 2 today. There's been an inflation rate, and it is not only that the reduction of the size and all the portions. It is true, and the statistics say it was 2.5% last year or something like that, where it used to be almost 0. But that's a fact. We believe that Peru, and I'm pretty sure that the authorities here, we have received visits from Richard Price and Boris Johnson recently, and they've been talks about MOUs and how to advance a possible free trade agreement with the UK or between the UK. One alternative is a bilateral agreement. Another alternative is a multilateral agreement with the members of a Pacific Alliance, which is where the UK is an observer. So apparently they are talking about these 2 possibilities. What else can I say about Brexit? I think everything has been said already. Just to publicity about my country, there are some companies, UK companies, that have already benefit of this possibility, the increase of the agricultural frontier in my country, and they bought some land. I have at least 3 companies that they are already producing in Peru to actually import their products from Peru. I hope them the best, and they don't suffer with all these potential changes. And these are the new, as I mentioned initially, we believe that the UK, as probably the British and the Dutch are the most adventurous people in trying new things. There's always, and there is a tendency, actually, somebody was talking about the markets, how it's changing the markets here. And there is a very notorious increase of the consumption of exotic fruits, let's say, and vegetables. So we believe that this is a platform that we are working on, and those are the possibilities, at least for us, in participating in international markets, especially in the UK. Thank you very much. I don't know whether I did well, but I cannot tell more about the Brexit.
Thank you. Please just stand up. Jose, would you like to join us again? Questions for the World Cup team, then? Any questions from the floor? You'll be stretching or asking a question. You're stretching. 2 gentlemen at the back.
Hi. Good evening. This is a question for Jose. I want to ask, for the Spanish citrus, in probably a scenario that with the Brexit, what the government does is to reduce the tariffs against third countries, like let's say North African countries. How the Spanish citrus is going to compete with those producers, let's say Morocco, Algeria, Turkey? How are you going to compete with them in terms of price?
Thank you. I think we had no option to compete on prices. In the case of lemons, we have very tough competition from Turkey. But what have been proved in the last couple of years is that the residues, the pesticide residues from Turkey are quite high. So we made lobby with the Commission, and Turkish lemons were introduced into the risk list products and are controlled in a more specifically way. In fact, during the last season, 20% of the lorries from Turkey entering into the EU had to be controlled to check if the pesticide residues were okay. This is just an example. We cannot compete with the production from Morocco, or from Egypt, or from Turkey on prices. We can compete, proving that we have a global gap commitment from our growers, that we are making a good surveillance of pesticide residues, and specifically we can compete giving service. That means that we have a good logistics system, and we can pick the fruit today, and just in 24 hours our citrus are on the shelf of the supermarket. This is the only way we can compete.
Thank you. Was there a further question at the back?
Yeah, sorry. Okay, you mentioned the pesticides. What about, for example, South Africa with problems with the black spot? Obviously, that's not something that probably the regulations in the UK are going to look at it, because obviously they don't have lemon production, so probably they won't really care about the black spot. Is there any way we can really offer more value? Is there, do you have something in mind? Because of the real threats that I'm seeing here.
Yeah, we have this story of citrus black spot, and not only with South Africa, but also with Argentina. And Nigel and me, we have been discussing about that for the last 3 or 4 years in Brussels. We had to take into consideration that we in Spain are really frightened about the possibility of introducing a new pest like citrus black spot. If we look at the experience they had in Brazil or in Florida with black spot, with greening, with citrus canker, with all these kind of pests, we have seen that the economical impact has been really huge. And in particular, the case of Florida is really a good example. If you don't control in a good way the possibility of introducing a pest, you will have a problem for sure in the future. But we are not in the position, we are not making lobby to close the market. We only are making lobby to have a good control system putting in place in the European market. And on the other way around, we were talking about that before the meeting. We had the case of potatoes with Epitrix. We have this problem in this pest in Spain. Most probably, if we go to a hard Brexit, probably DEFRA will forbid the import of Spanish potatoes into the UK market due to this disease we have in Spain. We see that in the future, possibility of making less controls to citrus black spot from citrus coming from South Africa can be a possibility. Anyway, the only way we have to compete from the sector in Spain is giving the service during 10 or 11 months. And in fact, in the case of lemons, we are working in Spain to extend the production calendar and to be able to produce and to export 12 months all the year with Spanish origin. But this is one of the the good points to have in mind in the future.
Okay. Can I maybe just add to that? You know, I think Richard earlier on, from a plant health point of view, talked about biosecurity. So that's fundamental to the UK as it is to the rest of Europe. There's been a great debate between the two of us in various European Commission meetings because we've had different views from time to time. Because many UK businesses would say, well, look, black spot's not an issue to UK production. But there has to be some balance here. And I think what you also have to remember is, if you look at our website, the DEFRA website that Richard mentioned, there are other pests and diseases coming from other countries, including South Africa, that are a major threat to the UK, such as false codling moth, which is a South African issue. So there are broader issues that will impact on that supply chain. And I really would, and I think Richard mentioned, I really would encourage you to look at our website, go elsewhere if you wish, about understanding, when Richard highlighted the interceptions of the products and the countries, because as we move through this process, and generally within the Commission, the rules will get stricter, and in the UK, and you may have your supply chain badly interrupted if you've made the wrong decision from the wrong product from the wrong country at times of the year. It's inevitable.
Sorry for taking the spotlight. One last question that we went a little bit very on the surface. Maybe Nigel, you can help me, or Jose. Right now, the lorries, the trucks with the food, they go around UK under the EU legislation. I don't know. Do you know if the legislation is going to change for the transport, for the roads? Because I think it's key for the logistics. I don't know if you know what I mean.
Sorry, I think you're talking about logistics. Are we talking about road transports from, let's say, from Europe to the UK?
Yeah, basically, it's the license, the drivers, they have to drive in UK. Basically, it's because they go under the EU legislation. So a lorry can deliver goods from Spain, let's say Manchester, and at the same time they can go to Glasgow, pick up some fish, and go down to France. Obviously, if the lorries, for example, the drivers, they are not going to be allowed to drive into UK, how, you know, that's something they are talking about, or that's not in the...
Yeah, I mean, that is something that the Freight Trade Association and others, FPC, are highlighting, that we want that, you know, reciprocal regulation so we can actually effectively drive, move goods, etc., etc. But when you talk about logistics, there are huge numbers of issues. You know, we've talked about potential, you know, inspections at points of arrival. It's impossible with the infrastructure we have from a European point of view at the moment. However, there may be other ways of doing it. But at the same time, when you talk about logistics, unless every HGV is going to be a Tesla in the near future, you also need a driver. And the UK, just like Europe, is very, very short of HGV drivers. So there will be some challenges along the way. Any other questions? Oh, actually, I've got him interested now.
And it's picking up from that question from the floor as well about this authorized economic operators, because obviously this doesn't apply only to the fruit exporters, but also to logistics operators.
Sure.
But the question really is here that I would like to find out whether in Spain, given the fact also what we heard earlier on about the fact that more and more production is actually happening outside Europe, I mean Morocco and in Turkey, what is the uptake among sort of the 80% of the SMEs that you mentioned earlier on in your presentation of actually applying for an AEO status? Where are we? Do you have actual figures about this?
Can I help? I can, from a UK point of view, I'd look at it this way. An AEO status at the moment is European-wide. That allows me to do a range of things. As an importing nation, if you put it in that context from the UK, if you go and look at the list, because the list is published on a government website, you will find 2 UK produce businesses with AEO status. That's all. There are even less in other parts of Europe. However, what there are is a number of specialist logistics businesses that do have AEO status. So given the change in the legislation that may or may not be transposed, there could well be a fundamental change in the management of that delivery logistics process, call it what you will. But that's pure speculation. You can, as a fresh produce business, you can actually apply for AEO status. It is very complicated, it's very expensive to achieve, but you can get different levels of authority. But it's not for the faint-hearted. Okay? No further questions? Thank you both of you. And if I could just say to both of you, really do appreciate that. And if one of you do happen to meet England in one of the matches, please don't let it go to penalties. Put us out of our misery beforehand.